Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. How are you? I'm a little shaken up today just because I had a horrendous night last night. Actually, the first part of the night started out great. I went to see a play that I had worked on with some friends, and the play was really great. But as I drove off, this incredible storm started. And I had a long drive ahead of me, and I had to actually pull over because I couldn't see the road, and it was very dangerous. Not only was it downpouring, but there was thunder, lightning, mist on the road. It was really hazardous. So I had to wait for about 45 minutes sitting in my car, and there was lightning everywhere. Now, I love storms, and we know Batilda does too, but only when I'm safe inside, not out. I know a car is a safe place, but it was really frightening. And very close to me, a bolt of lightning hit the ground. I've never seen lightning hit the ground in front of my eyes before, like that close. It was only a few yards away. The car rocked. There was an explosion. It hit like the backyard of someone's home, and I didn't see a fire, but cops did arrive soon after that, and I just sat there with my hazard lights on, and I was off the road, so I felt safe, but I was just like listening to an audiobook of Fellowship of the Ring, which I'm rereading or re-listening to. And I did stay calm, and I just waited until it was the rain had let up enough to drive home. But it was really pretty crazy, and it just made me realize just the power of that kind of thing, of lightning, and just a reminder of how small I am, and how vulnerable. And especially if it weren't for my car, I probably would have really felt that bolt of lightning, and maybe even gotten electrocuted. I'm not really sure how that works. Anyway, I'm babbling. So that was last night. Last weekend, I went took a little day trip with my husband. We went to New York just to do some business, and then on the way back, we went to a wonderful place, which is Thomas Edison's laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey, not far from New York. It's pretty close to Newark. And had a wonderful time. I'd never been there, looking at all the old laboratories and just the excitement of the invention of the old phonographs, filmmaking, early filmmaking. That was fascinating. And his library was wonderful. I mean, I think that I'll put a little clip in. That was the highlight of that day for me, as far as like that inside that museum. The library was tremendous. I just wish that I could walk around through the stacks, but I couldn't. And of course, whenever I'm in a small town, I always like to check out the local bookstores, especially used bookstores. So I went into this place called the Montclair Book Center. And it's a lovely bookstore, mostly used, but kind of like a hybrid, and very large, very well organized. And of course, I went looking for the horror section. That's when the disappointment started, I guess, because, horror just does not get much respect. For one thing, it was shoved in a corner, and the ladder that's used for, I guess, to climb up the stacks was shoved up against one of the shelves. So in order to look at the shelves, I had to move the ladder. And then when I started digging around, it was the same old story: Stephen King, Anne Rice, and a few treasures that I picked up. But another thing about it was the paranormal romance was shelved in the horror section, which is not where it belongs, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with paranormal romance. I love that genre. I read that genre. I actually write in that genre sometimes. But it's not horror. It's romance. It should be a separate section in romance. Okay, so that's my little rant. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me. But in general, I feel horror just doesn't get the understanding or the respect it deserves. But I did find some treasures, so I'll share those with you, and then some other things that I found at a thrift store. And I'm going to talk a little bit about GarbAugust. GarbAugust, I'm trying to say that right. An incredible read-along that Ollie over at Criminali has put together. I'll link his video below. He has a lot of videos about this. He has some great co-hosts doing this with him. And Alex from the Booktubers put up a really fun video. And this all kind of happened last week. I'm late to the party, but better late than never. I'm going to share some of my trashiest books among my library of mostly trash. So these are the books that I managed to find in the horror section of the Montclair Book Center. This one I was really happy to get. This is Psycho by Robert Bloch. I'm ashamed to admit that I've never read this book. I've seen the movie a million times. I love the movie. It's one of my favorites, of course. But I've never read the book, and look how short that is. I'm going to read this month. I don't know if I would consider it trash, but definitely sensational. The next one I found is called The Vines by Christopher Rice. Christopher Rice, the son of Anne and Stan Rice. I knew that he was a writer, but I've never read anything that he's written. This is a pretty short book, so I thought this should be a good sample of his writing. This one I was really happy to find because I don't have an actual book copy of it. I only have it on Kindle, and I had mentioned in my last video that I dropped my Kindle in the bathtub when I was reading Exquisite Corpse by Poppy C. Brett. I was like, ah! Splash down. It's destroyed. I'm asking for a new one for my birthday. That's just a hint. No, I'm just kidding. But if you'd like to send me a card, birthday's coming up. So I'll put the address below as always. Anyway, I found a nice hardback copy of My Sweet Audrina by the lady herself, V.C. Andrews. Lovely dust jacket in good shape. And this is not the first edition, it's a book club edition, but still, I was really happy to get that. Then this one I pounced on because I've been looking for this, and that is The Vampire Companion. The official guide to Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. I have the Mayfair Witches version of this, which I have used as a source book for reading my favorite Anne Rice series. So I'm going to be reading more of the Vampire Chronicles, so this will definitely come in handy. So despite feeling like the bookstore wasn't treating the horror section with as much respect as I would have liked, I still found some treasures and I was grateful. So this one is Flaming Tree by Phyllis A. Whitney. I really love her writing, and I have quite a few of these types of books of hers. I'm not sure if this is gothic or what it is, but you know, I always pick up an extra Phyllis whenever I see one. Same with Dorothy Eden. This is The Millionaire's Daughter, and I just am in love with that dust jacket. It's so great. So these will go on my romance shelf where they belong, not with the horror. All right, a few other things I picked up. These books were very cheap, so I grabbed a couple sci-fi. Year's Best Sci-Fi in 2017, I guess that is. I love reading sci-fi. I feel like I don't read enough sci-fi, so if these are like best sample short stories, this is a nice anthology to look through. And I was really thrilled to find these great illustrated classics of Dracula and Frankenstein. These are children's books, abridged, rewritten, I'm sure. Oh, they have stickers on them, but other than that, they're in good shape. Oh, somebody's name's on it. And very cool illustrations. So this one I grabbed, Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. Definitely heard of this book. Sci-fi classic, award-winning novel. I think I'm going to try reading this one soon, and it's not that long. I think sometimes I avoid reading large fantasy or science fiction books like the thick ones just because it seems like such a commitment, but I just want to sample some sci-fi soon. Then I got a copy of McNally's Dilemma by Lawrence Sanders. This is one of the McNally books that I didn't have, so I found this. It's funny, I have 2 copies of McNally's Folly, and I thought, well, I'll get rid of one copy. I'll, donate it to my little library. And right before I was going to give it away, I thought, I should check this and see if it's signed, and it was, so I'm going to hold on to the signed one. But yeah, I love my McNally books. Is this considered trash? I don't think so. And I also got a copy of Anne Rice's Merrick, which I have not read and didn't have a copy of. This is connected with the Mayfair Witches, so I'm looking forward to reading this very soon. I feel like I have a lot of books now that I want to read. So I love this reading challenge of reading trash for the month of August because why not? Since so much of my library would be considered, at least by literary snobs, to be very trashy, and I'm very proud of this. I love trash, I love camp of all stripes. I had to think about, like, what would I consider a trashy book? Like, what is my definition of trash? And I think it is something that elicits a little bit of shame. So let's start with this one. Okay, I found this at a thrift store yesterday when I did my little haul. Actually, this was at a library sale that I went to before I hit the thrift store. And I thought, yeah, this one is definitely on that level. This is called Muscovado by Eleanor Hercott, As Scorching as Mandingo. Now, when I was a kid, Mandingo was, I think it probably came out in the 60s, was a trashy novel about like an interracial love affair on a southern plantation. So you kind of get the idea. And yeah, great cover though. But this book is, it's a little cringe. Anyway, I guess, this one I'm going to save for the end. This is another super cringe book that gives me a little bit of shame because I actually bought this. And that is Meghan and Harry, The Real Story by Lady Colin Campbell. Now, I do love Lady Colin Campbell's YouTube channel. It's all about the royal family and like all the dirt on the royals, especially these two. And it's highly entertaining, and she is a great character. I love her accent. I love her jewelry. I love her castle that she lives in. I'll link her channel below. Another of one of my favorite channels that deals with the royal dirt is River. He is hilarious. If you don't know his channel, I will also link it below. This is something I read outside of horror. I love reading about rock stars, and I love reading about celebrity scandals in general. It drives my husband crazy how dedicated I am to reading trash journalism like the Daily Mail, but I just can't help myself. I don't really look at TMZ too much, though, I'm proud to say. Anyway, I haven't read this one yet, but I will start it. I want to get the Tom Bower book, the new book that came out about these two, but it's so expensive. It's really hard to justify paying over $25 for a paperback. It's just really not in my budget. So I'm going to read this one instead. A lot of people have been doing videos about the Tom Bower book, so I feel like I've already read it. Some people have been basically reading each chapter on YouTube, so I'll get to it eventually. Hopefully I'll see it in the sale bin at some point. And speaking of Lady Colin Campbell, here's another one of her books about the royal family. This one is called The Real Diana, which I have read, and I read it recently actually, and it was really very good. Lady Colin Campbell's an excellent writer, and if you've ever heard her speak, she's very eloquent and articulate, and I've learned so many new vocabulary words from watching her videos and also reading her books. She's lovely. This was good. I felt a little sad, I have to say. Not that I always loved Diana, don't get me wrong. I was young when she got married, and I felt like, I was kind of looking at her, not as a role model, but somebody, that you look at because she's a princess and she had great style. And this book gets much more into her, like, mental health issues, her struggles with an eating disorder, and lots of men. I didn't realize that, how many there were. But yeah, I definitely felt like, okay, I've learned something new about this lady. All right, what else? Okay, this book, this is actually a really nice copy of it that I found in a thrift store a couple years ago. I haven't reread it for a while, but this was one of my favorite trashy books when I was a teenager. And it's so, what we used to call a dirty book. Now, I was raised Catholic. I'm still a Catholic. So when I say dirty book, that's what I mean. This was one of the king of the dirty books. And this is Summer of 42 by Herman Rocher. I think he read a couple other books. This is about a young teenager, a boy who's coming into his sexuality, if you want to call it that. The whole book is about sex. It's hilarious, as I recall. I've read it many times when I was a kid. There was also a really good movie, but it's Hermie, Oski, and Benji, three friends navigating the very sexually charged waters of a summer vacation and trying to pick up girls. There's one hilarious scene where Hermie tries to buy prophylactics at a drugstore. Very memorable. And it's also a bittersweet love story about this boy having a scandalous affair with an older woman. So yes, this is a book that I don't think would be published today, or at least it wouldn't be treated in the same way, but good stuff. All right, what else? This is probably the trashiest book I have in my entire library, and I just did a video about this recently, and that's Hollywood Babylon by Kenneth Anger. I just found a decent copy of this. Yeah, the dust jacket's pretty beat up, but the only other copy I have is a paperback version. Read it many times. It is pure trash, and this is the kind of book that I feel a little guilty after reading it because it's so raunchy and so gross and just great. I love it. All right, so speaking of Hollywood trash, here is the ultimate, Mommy Dearest by Christina Crawford. Look at Christina. Now, I'm a huge Joan Crawford fan. I would probably even put myself on Team Joan, but I do have a lot of sympathy for what Christina went through, and she's never backed down from this story about how horrible her mother was. And yeah, that's a lot of fun. And of course, the movie's one of my favorites. I watch it at least once a year. So the next one I would definitely consider a trashy book, although I haven't read it. It looks fabulous, and that's Lucky by Jackie Collins. I should get my little Lucky, that diamond collar. Look at her. She's fabulous. I think there was a new Netflix doc about her, Jackie Collins. She always wore like leopard. I have read, what was the Rockstar? I've read a few of her Hollywood Wives, a few of her books, but I've never read this one. So I am saving my favorite trashy book for last, and that is the queen of trash writing of all time, and that is Jacqueline Suzanne. Now, I don't have the dust jacket. This is an old book. Of course, she wrote Valley of the Dolls. It's probably her most famous work, but this is my favorite, and this is Once Is Not Enough. Yes, there was a movie in the 70s about this book, but it would have had to be triple X rated to actually be true to this book. This is the dirtiest, the trashiest book of all time, and I absolutely love it. One of my best friends and I bonded over this book. We met over this book. When I quoted, as a freshman in college in the cafeteria, I quoted a line from this book, and he, as a joke, and he recognized it, and we immediately became best friends, and we've known each other for many decades. So good things have happened to this book. This was definitely, along with like a book like Summer of 42, this was definitely my like puberty book. So there's still a little bit of, when I read it, a little bit of like sneak in it, a little bit of Catholic guilt and shame, but it's fabulous. So I thought I would, just for fun, read an excerpt so you get to know what I'm talking about. It. So just a trigger warning, things are going to get dirty. So here we go. So this book is about like this young woman named January Wayne and her adventure. Her father is a big shot movie producer, lots of money, and no man will ever match him. Let's just put it this way. Jacqueline Suzanne dedicated it to my father who would understand. This came out in 1973. It's so great. There's one part near the end of this book where January, and it's all about her sexual experiences on the backdrop of like the sexual revolution on steroids. She's in New York City. She's going to orgies. She's having affairs left and right and doing all kinds of crazy things. But nothing will ever compare to Daddy. So the whole book is just really crazy. During the orgy scene, I was trying to find that part for you. The entire page is just the F word. The entire page, like I kid you not. This was such a fun book to read when I was 13 or 14. So the part I'm going to read you is early in the book when January is in Rome, where her father, Mike Wayne, is producing a movie with an Italian star who's kind of like a Sophia Loren. And one of the young stars is named Franco. And I apologize in advance for my bad Italian accent. Franco, it's getting late and... He pulled her back on the couch. First, drink your wine. He handed her the glass. She sipped it slowly. His hand dropped from the back of the sofa onto her shoulders. She pretended not to notice, but it felt heavy, as if it had a life of its own. The fingers began to play with the back of her neck. She made an effort and swallowed some of the wine. Then she stood up. Franco, I think I'd like to go. He stood up but held out his arms. Come, we dance, old-fashioned style. I really don't want... But his arms went around her, and he held her close as he led her into a slow dance. She felt the hardness of his body, the bulge in his pants. He was pressing against her, moving his body to the rhythm of the music. Her thin, poochy dress felt like paper. Suddenly he kissed her. His tongue pressed her lips apart. She tried to pull away, but he held her head with one hand, and the other he began caressing her breasts. She kept trying to get away from him, but he laughed at her efforts. Then, with one quick move, he lifted her up and carried her into the bedroom and tossed her lightly on the unmade bed. She jumped off the bed, pulling down her dress. She was too angry for tears. How dare you? How dare you? She ran into the living room, grabbed her purse, and ran toward the door. He leaped in front of her and blocked her way. January, is something wrong? Is something wrong? She said hoarsely. You asked me here for a drink and then try to rape me. Rape? He stared at her. I tried to make love to you. To you, it's obviously the same thing. What same thing? Rape is crime. Making love is two people whose bodies long for one another. You agreed to come here, no? For a drink and to... Well, I thought your feelings were hurt. Maybe I have big temper, he said, but you are acting like spoiled American girl. Well, I am an American girl. Ah, yes. You are Machizo's daughter. That is the big difference. See, they say American girls have rules. First date, maybe goodnight kiss. I sound like Count Dracula, I'm sorry. Second date, maybe a little feel. Third date, more touching and feeling. But never no lovemaking until after fourth or fifth date. And American men follow these rules. Do they still? I'm not sure. But Mike Wayne makes his own rules. I thought his daughter would be like him. You mean, just like him? You thought I'd go to bed with you? He laughed. Well, just like that, you went for drinks. You danced. It's all very natural and very good. Making love follows. He leaned over and kissed her. With one frantic burst of strength, she broke away and blindly groped at her dress. As she pulled it down, she gasped between sobs, Please, please, let me go. Why are you crying? His amazement was real. He tried to put his arms around her again, and she screamed. January, what is wrong? I will be a good lover, please. Take off your clothes and come to bed with me. He was fidgeting with the buckle of his belt. He stepped out of his pants. His grin was boyish, as if he were cajoling a stubborn child. Come, look how very much I want you. Please, look. He was standing before her in brief shorts. She tried not to stare, but she was hypnotized. He smiled modestly. Franco like stallion. I think that might have been the line that I quoted. You will be pleased. Come. He held out his arms. We make love. Your body is calling out to me. Why you try to deny this happiness to us both? Okay, it goes on and on and on. And when he discovers she's really a virgin and she's only 17, he's like, Mamma mia. It's so fantastic. In fact, it makes me want to read it now. This is the perfect beach book. So I've shared some of my shameful, trashy books. Please let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite trashy books are. I would love to hear your true confessions. So that's all I have for today. Stay safe, stay out of lightning storms, and I will see you next time in my haunted library. Bye!